Just these two more quick stories, real quick. Nothing like world ending. However, I did want to talk real quick about any zombie movie fans out there. There's a zombie movie that is really great. It came out a few years ago. It's a really good one, and apparently it's getting a remake already. I don't know how I feel about this. It could go either way, though I do feel as if it's a bit unneeded, honestly, and that would be Train to Busan. Train to Busan is pretty well regarded amongst everybody. Everybody who sees it says, yeah, that was a really tense, good, entertaining zombie flick. Very well made. It looks great. It sounds great. There's nothing bad about it. It's in another language. It's in Korean. Beyond that, you're either watching subtitles or watching a dub. But it's a really good movie, which leads me to wonder, why are we remaking it? It's not a movie like the culture there, or at least the culture as it's presented in this movie is not so different from our own that we need an Americanized version of it. Beyond the language that's spoken in the movie, which, as I said, can be dubbed or subtitles, the culture's not that different. So I don't see the point of remaking this in an American light. Train to Busan has been it's very popular to this day. I mean, this just seems very unneeded to me. I wasn't aware that they were remaking it. I'm surprisingly not surprised that they're remaking it, but they apparently have found a director for it, and it's going to be a guy named Timo. I'm going to try this. Tahihento? I don't know. I'm going to just say Timo because I can say that. Sorry, I'm terrible with names, man. But he's the director of Night Comes From Us, and he is going to be remaking Train to Busan. Now, the one thing in this whole story that gives me a small ray of light is one person's name. Let me start right here. It says, the idea of remaking Train to Busan might scare some fans. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the original film. I agree. As it stands as one of the best zombie features of the past decade, absolutely. The only reason to remake it, by Hollywood standards, is to make it English language. I hadn't even read this article yet, and I totally agree with what they're saying here, which is enough to rile up purists and don't think that's good enough. Cause, well, James Wan is producing a new Train to Busan remake. That right there, James Wan. He is the only reason. Nothing against this director. But James Wan being involved, which not every single thing he's involved in is great, but the guy has a pretty good track record at this point. He is the one thing that makes me say, I'll keep my eye out for it. I'll see. I'm not excited about it. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't think it's needed, but I will keep my eye on it. And when it comes out, I'll give it a shot. And hopefully James Wan will work his magic on it because the guy has an eye, man. He's taken some things and I'm like, why are they even making that? And made something good out of it. He's also been in charge of Annabelle, but and that movie was bad. But nobody wins them all. But we'll see. I mean, Train to Busan, I just don't see how they're going to make it better. Because that movie, it was really entertaining. It had great action. It had great story. It had great characters. It had really, it had all the emotions. It wasn't just nonstop action, but it had just the right amount of action, and everything meant something. I really liked what they did with that movie. I think I agree with what this article says, that this isn't needed. What's the purpose? There isn't a purpose besides to put it in English. Which you can do that with subs or dubs. Just do that. What's the point? There are some movies, especially some movies from Japan, because Japan's culture is markedly different than our own in some ways. There are some movies that I understand why an American remake makes sense, because the culture divide in some things is very different. So it makes sense, if the movie makes sense, to bring it over, and at times that works. The Ring, for instance. I thought that was a great American remake. That was really good. And a lot of Not like absolutely different, but a lot of the cultural differences between here and there are different, so it makes sense to appeal to the people that live here. But Train to Busan and the way that culture is presented, the Korean culture in that movie, it's not really about that. It's very much it's very relatable with pretty much anybody. I mean, anybody here in the West, any Western viewers. There's nothing in this movie that yells, "Hey, go remake it." But either way, they're remaking it. There's not a lot more here. They just talk about how they want to be respectful to the original and yada yada yada, and they talk about other things that this director has made. He may be a good director. Why Train to Busan? They just had a sequel to it come out too, by the way. Regardless of what you thought of Peninsula, it just came out. Now they're remaking it. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but you know what? Who am I? We'll find out. This, like many of the other things this week, is pretty far out. And but as soon as it does come out, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it that much. But I don't have high hopes for it. But I will say that James Wan being attached to it does give me a little bit of hope. Thanks for checking out this clip from the JarCast Movie Podcast. If you like this and want more, then check out the JarCast live stream every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time on the Jacob Anders Review YouTube channel, where you can also find movie reviews every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. You can also listen to the entire podcast on all major podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Google, and iTunes. So if you prefer audio, whichever one is your preferred, check it out there. Once again, I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching. And as always, stay sexy, YouTube.